Hello, I'm Samantha Nolan-Smith, and this is Lessons in Visibility. In this show, we ask what can be learned from the two faces of visibility. The first involves stepping forward and choosing to be seen and heard. The second opens you up to new ways of seeing and hearing the world around you. Welcome to the show. Today, I wanted to share with you some of the understanding about visibility blocks that I've developed over the years, particularly with regard to understanding how the different influences in your life impact on your experience of being visible. So after working with many women over the years on visibility, I started to discern 4 different influences impacting on your experience. The first of those is individual experiences, and that's really about you having experiences as you go through your life that are specific to you, although there are always points of interconnection between these 4 levels that I'm going to speak about, that impact you in a specific way. In other words, lots of people could have the same experience, but you respond to it in a specific way, which then influences your experience of being visible in the world from that point onwards. So that could be, you may have grown up in a household where you were told by older people that you were to be seen and not heard. Or you may have been at school playing in the playground and fallen over, and instead of people being kind to you, they were mean to you and they laughed at you, and it made you feel really uncomfortable and like, I don't want people to see me because I don't want that experience of being laughed at again. Or maybe you put up your hand in class one day to express an opinion, and your teacher shut you down and said, no, that's not the right answer, or was unkind to you in some way or dismissive of your perspective. And that made you think, I'm going to be really cautious now about who I share my perspective with or who I share my opinions with. They're individual influences which are a layer that need to be explored in order to overcome visibility fears, to heal visibility-related wounds, and to feel comfortable about speaking up and being seen and heard in the world. That's the first layer. Although these aren't linear in any way, that's just the first layer I'm talking about today. Another layer is the collective wounding that we experience as a consequence of identifying with a specific group of people. So as women, for example, we experience specific wounding around our gender. Disabled women experience specific messages around visibility. Some of those are intersecting, so there are messages around disability and gender, and some which are specifically related to disability and don't have a gendered component to them. As a woman of color, an Indigenous woman, a Black woman, there is again messaging that's specific to visibility and the color of your skin, the ways in which your skin has been racialized. And some of those have an intersection with gender and some of them don't, and so on and so forth. And so we go through layer upon layer. And of course, our identities are multifarious and we don't just have one or two, we have multiple intersecting points, and we receive different messages there around being visible, around dangers associated with being visible, and around how we're expected to show up and speak up. And so when somebody of our identity group is harmed in some way, when they speak up and they're called out, they're ridiculed, they're dismissed, when they're visible and something damaging happens to them, so they're walking through the street and they're harmed, And there are gendered experiences of this, and there are racial experiences of this. There are experiences of this that are associated with being a member of the LGBT community, for example. When these things happen, there's a collective wound that is ignited. You know that feeling of there's this raw wound that hasn't healed, and then somebody's throwing salt into that wound. That is another layer of our visibility experience. So each time we see somebody, even though the experience isn't happening to us specifically in that moment, the collective wound means that hearing about this, seeing this, learning about this ignites the wound. And so impacts then how we feel about speaking up, how we feel about using our voices. There's absolutely a need in that moment for healing on multiple levels. So that's the collective experience. Then we have the intergenerational experience, which is about your specific lineage. So your ancestors, and then also your descendants, the people who may come after you in your ancestral line. That lineage carries its own story of visibility. And that has been carried on through your DNA and plays out in the way that your genes either are turned on or turned off. And that is another layer that is really important to look at. Inside Women Speaking Up, some of my favorite work that we share in there is about connecting to hidden ancestors, to the spirit, the soul of ancestors who may have been silenced, who may have been enslaved, who may have been imprisoned or placed in asylums, who were in socioeconomic circumstances which limited their voices in some way, and then doing some healing work around that limitation, which then changes the way that your genes respond to your environment. So let's say a gene is turned off because you have an ancestral pattern where the women in your family did not get the chance to live the lives of their dreams, where they were in some form of servitude to other people, where they were considered secondary players in their home or in their societies. By connecting with that lineage and then doing work to heal the wounding associated with that, specifically around visibility, specifically around showing up on your own terms, being powerful, expressing yourself in a way that feels authentic to you, feels true to you, specifically in relation to things like swallowing your words or your opinions or smiling when there was rage really boiling inside, all of these kinds of things. As we look at these, as we attend to these things and we do some healing back up the lineage, then the gene that would enable you to feel comfortable about self-expression, about asking for what you want, about ambition and going for your dreams and all of those things that has been turned off because of the lineage then turns on. And you start to feel very differently and you start to behave very differently in the world. And then finally, there's what I call the energetic layer. It could also be called the soul layer. There are many different ways you might name this. It's the layer that I have found to be the most subtle, and that's the layer of your own soul's journey through time and the various experiences that you may have had, that your soul may have had, both incarnated as it is now at this particular time, in this particular body that you find yourself in, but also other experiences that you may have had. And if I were of a different culture, I might call that the karmic layer. But if I take it just purely through a Western lens, for example, then this is a layer that I have found through one-to-one work that lots of people access without any specific facilitation from me, in the sense that I will do the same sort of facilitation technique, and whilst, let's say, 60% of people will uncover memories about this lifetime, and then a small percentage of people will uncover collective memories. That's rarer. I don't find as many people experience that, but I certainly have experienced that myself, and I have come across people who have also done that. Then there is a percentage of people who are able to access intergenerational memories and experiences and woundings. And then there are people who, through that same facilitation process, will jump through time to soul experiences, which feel to be experiences that they have had that attach to their souls, which relate to what we would call past lives. And sometimes they're incarnated experiences, in the sense that they're experiences that they seem to have had in a body which they feel to have been their own experience. And sometimes they're soul experiences between incarnations. And what I have observed is that when that comes up, that level, it seems to be an important part of an individual's experience to, in this lifetime, to see the wounding and to heal it. For people who have those experiences and those types of woundings come up, and I include myself in this, what invariably happens is there is a freeing at a level that they just weren't able to access before. So there was still, up until the point of accessing that wounding, an anxiety or a fear. They couldn't work out, why is it there? What is this? And then they're able to access that level and then experience the world, walk through the world in a much different way from that point forward. I've presented them as those 4 levels, but it's not an ascension. I mention this because I think the spiritual ego in particular can really attach itself to this idea of, oh, if I get to those energetic layers, it means something special about me. And honestly, I've had people who have worked with me one-to-one, never having done any personal development work before, and have gone immediately to the soul level and found something there. And then I've had people who've done personal development work for years and years and years, and for them, that's not something that ever comes up because they've got other things to focus on in this lifetime. So I think that's really important to mention. The one that seems, from my experiences, to be least understood is the collective level, actually, because so much personal development work that I have immersed myself in has arisen from the West, and the West is so influenced by this idea of the individual. I think that collective experiences and collective wounding has not been deeply understood broadly within personal development realms. And I think that's a shame, because for myself, what I have uncovered is that we can both be impacted by the collective experience in ways that we wildly underestimate. And that looks like going through the world thinking, well, I've done all this clearing on my individual experiences. Why am I still held back? And often it's because, I haven't actually looked at the collective. But also what I have discovered from my own experiences is that we can then do work to heal the collective through our own attention and focus on that level, which benefits not just you, but all people who identify with a specific group. And that's a beautiful offering that you can make to the world. So that's what underpins our understanding of block clearing at the School of Visibility. And I have spent many years experimenting with different block clearing techniques to work at the different layers of the being. And certainly different people connect with different forms of block clearing, and different techniques work better or less well on the different layers of the being. And I wanted to share this with you because it's easy to underestimate the depth of work that may be required to genuinely feel at ease in the world. And I'm really keen for people to start to see this visibility work as not something that you do for a season, but that you integrate into your ongoing lived experience. And we have resources to support you with that inside the School of Visibility. And my intention for everybody who is connected to the School of Visibility in any way, whether it's through social media or through this podcast, or whether it's by receiving our weekly emails or by enrolling as a student, that we provide a spark at all of those levels that reminds you that visibility matters, that your voice matters, that any fears that you experience around visibility aren't something to feel bad about, aren't something to feel ashamed of, but are a reflection of the depth of impact that different experiences can have on your willingness and capacity to be seen and heard. I'd love to hear what your reflections are on these 4 layers of wounding that impact on your experience of being visible in the world, and what this episode has sparked for you. And of course, if you want to come along and have some of these block clearing experiences firsthand, I facilitate block clearing all the time inside Women Speaking Up. You can find out more about that at womenspeakingup.com or use the link in the show notes. Keep diving into those various layers and know that with each layer or with each wounding that you heal, there's a depth of ease, of self-acceptance, of love, of connection that's made possible to you, which you then are able to embody in the world and serve as a model, a spark for other people. And ultimately, that's why visibility matters, because choosing to be visible in that way is a radical act, but more importantly, it's a step toward a genuinely peaceful, harmonious, compassionate world. And I'm sure that we would all like to experience that. Thanks for listening to Lessons in Visibility. If you'd like to connect in other places, come on over to theschoolofvisibility.com. And you can also find us at the School of Visibility on Instagram, Substack, Facebook, and Threads. Lessons in Visibility is produced by the School of Visibility on the land of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people. I acknowledge the peaceful legacy of custodianship that tens of thousands of years of coexistence with the land has bestowed on us all. And I note the visibility journey that remains unfinished. Voice, treaty, truth.